Free advice, would you like some free advice? Free advice forever.
Welcome back to the show. This is episode
18. We are legal.
We can finally vote.
And smoke.
And that's it. Welcome, you guys. In front of me is your other host, Morgan Beard.
And in front of me is the other host, Rob Zaleski.
What do you call that? To my forward, to my front?
What do you mean?
You'd say to my left is,
to my left, to my right.
People. Yeah, but we're just facing each other.
Yeah. Across from me.
Across from me.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
On the other end of that mic. In your other earlobe. No, not earlobe.
Yeah, I don't mix it that way. I do this in mono. I thought about panning you to the right and me to the left.
Oh, that'd be funny. Like angel and devil.
Did you just say that mixing decision would be funny? That would be funny.
Yeah, I think it would be funny.
I think it would be annoying.
A handful of people would appreciate it. Everyone else would hate it.
People are listening to this in their car. I guess some people use headphones. Headphones are when you can really hear that kind of panning choice.
I thought you were going to just define headphones. Headphones are when you have
two little speakers right on your head.
One in each ear. Rob on the left, Morgan on the right.
Yeah. No. Our podcasting service, Podbean, is on a simple plan that we've decided to not splurge on, and we upload mono 128 kilobytes per second audio files. So there is no difference between what's coming out of your left and right speaker right now if you're interested in that type of technical information.
And if you have any grievances, please direct them to freeadvicepodcast@gmail.com.
Donation,
specifically
and we will
address
upgrade to stereo. Ooh, if you could only hear that theme song, that sweet, sweet intro music that you just heard in stereo. Wow, it really sends you to another world. So,
what are the differences between that world and the world that they're currently on?
It's more like a child's happy place.
Oh.
It's dreamlike and idyllic.
You know what it reminds me of? That Zoolander video that Mugatu makes where it's like, happy, happy, ha ha ha, when he's programming. Spoiler alert! In case you haven't seen Zoolander, which was released in like 2002.
I have seen it. I'm struggling to recall this moment in it,
the villain, Mugatu, programs Derek Zoolander
sure, Will Ferrell,
Ben Stiller. Yeah.
Yeah,
Will Ferrell is
Mugatu.
Right. Yeah, and Ben Stiller is Zoolander to
Derek Zoolander.
Become a fighter of the Malaysian Prime Minister and creates this video. I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for.
There's a big payoff for this.
Oh, there's none payoff.
Okay.
No, zero.
Will you gain something out of telling it to
Absolutely
completion?
not. Let's stop right now.
Okay, great. Love it. Thanks.
You're welcome. But now I feel like the onus is on you to interject with something.
I think just sitting here in silence for the next 20 seconds is going to be more appreciated than that summary of the plot of Zoolander.
Just what the people want.
Yeah. Just a second to be
meditate.
alone with their thoughts. No, who am I kidding? That's why you put us on, because that shit going on in your head, that shit is scary. Don't confront any of that right now. You got good company in the form of Morgan Beard.
And Rob Zaleski.
Welcome to the podcast. This is episode 18.
Disregard all that Zoolander shit. Here we are.
Yeah.
All
We're
right.
here, guys. Do you have any advice that you'd like to ask me for today?
Great question. So I was discussing in the wake of my fears and anxieties from the week and maybe from the 17th episode of this podcast that I've felt a little less able to kind of like think on my toes comedically and a little bit stuck in a rut in terms of kind of leaning on the same types of conversation topics over and over. And I found myself in a situation on Saturday night where I went to see a concert of a friend with one person that I knew and like a whole group of people that only she knew. And I was meeting them all for the first time, which normally I'm like, yeah, that's totally great. I can easily fit into like any group and do fine, or at least entertain myself. And I felt like I was just standing there like a deer in headlights, racking my brain for something like, what would a normal person say right now? Like, what? And then not even being sure that there was even a problem, and I could have easily just like not put that pressure on myself to supply conversation. But so what are some techniques that you use specifically as a soldier of conjuring fun to create in the moment inspiration that flows conversationally and is interesting, entertaining, and sort of different?
Okay, you say a soldier of fun.
Yeah. I know, I kind of like mixed metaphors there. It was weird.
Do you want advice for that night, or more about generally how to be more funny or feel more like you have more of a sense of play?
Yeah, let's go with that. Because that night already happened. I already, I got a D
Gotcha.
in my mind.
Well, one piece of groundwork is, for many skills, is kind of a universal principle, but your ability to be funny is directly related to your comfort with the idea that you might not be funny. Like, you're taking a risk in making any kind of a joke. And so, like, if you're all right with them not laughing at it, you're going to do better. So, you seem pretty comfortable about this experience that night. So you're already on the right path, I think. I want to draw from a book called The Comics Toolbox.
Yeah, please.
Author's name I forget, but I have a PDF of it if you're ever interested in skimming it. And I also have my notes, which distills the content.
Great.
Well.
That'll go up on our eventual Patreon.
Yeah,
Rob's
sure.
notes
No,
about a
I'm
comics
speaking
toolbox.
Speaking to Morgan in particular.
I know.
But in that, the author argues that the best thing that you can do to inspire your humor is to just have new experiences, especially ones that are challenging and foreign to you, somehow scary, but not like physically threatening.
Yeah.
And that when you do that, when you're traveling, for instance, I always come up with lots of jokes. If you've been on a trip with me ever, I'm a hoot. I'm really much funnier in new environments.
He is a hoot.
When
Yeah,
you're like,
that's true.
you're coming into contact with new traditions, new policies, new establishments, and people doing new things that you've never seen before. And there's all this stuff to like take in and compare to other things and analyze and come up with explanations for.
Yeah.
So the big thing on having a sense of play, I guess, is just looking for games. And I think you do this pretty well in our conversations, but like finding a comic perspective is what this book was largely about. The author's was, what if the world was set up as my personal circus, and everything that I see was put there specifically to amuse me?
I love
kind of
that.
like a narcissist's lens. He's like, when I take that, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
What
much
a
of,
playful narcissist.
right. Well, most of the comedic perspectives that a person can adopt that are successful have some type of a flaw in them. That's what's funny about it, is that like you're too much of something that we agree upon is like a bad characteristic, and you're letting yourself be that. So for him, that's like this self-obsession and the idea that like every person on the street selling newspaper was put there to amuse him, and like if they're not doing that well, then that's a flaw in the design of the world. And that's like,
I like that.
one lens that he employs to find the fun in situations.
Yeah. I would like to challenge myself to invent a lens for myself along those lines to help me create more comedic observations. So I'll try to report back on that for next week.
I think that my lens, or well, you can have multiple comedic perspectives,
sure.
but one that I've identified in myself as one that comes up pretty often is the unnecessarily thorough analysis of a inconsequential problem, just for the sake of doing work on
Yes,
something and like
yes.
being 100% accurate
pretty
when
much
95% is totally fine.
It's the core of this podcast, if you will.
Yeah, it's a big component of my sense of humor that I find both true for me, and that it's like one of my defense mechanisms is intellectualizing things and playing out all the scenarios in my
Yeah.
head and like coming up with every exception and trying to really systematize things that don't always need that.
Yeah.
And so it's there's a pain in it for me and like a relatability for me that makes me find that type of stuff funny.
And there's also a sense of potential mastery for you over this element of yourself that you're like trying to gain more control over and use it more for good rather than for the purpose of not allowing you to engage. Like I guess like the purpose of a defense mechanism, right, is to like avoid sort of engaging with something. And so if you're then subverting this on its head in order to specifically engage with someone and make light of this thing, I think that that's a really positive.
I may not be using the term defense mechanism correctly.
okay.
Do you see them as bad or like something to be overcome? I think they can be over applied, but I think some defense mechanisms are great.
Some
and, like,
defense mechanisms
it just depends
are great.
on how you're using it. It'd be like running is a great thing to do, but not in traffic or like not. You know what I'm saying? It's totally situational. Like the behavior of having a defense mechanism and using it can defend you from potentially fatal situations or great pain that you don't. It's totally avoidable and great to do that. But
I think that in general, you kind of advance or grow into healthier defense mechanisms,
like
but then
sublimation, like creating art,
sublimation is
kind of like the end all be all, what everybody wants their defense mechanism to be, right?
Yeah. So just a quick definition. Sublimation.
Tell the dum-dums out there.
Sublimation is basically converting a sort of threatening emotion or impulse into something productive, into a healthy method of expression. So, like Rob said, using channeling sadness into making a work of art, or channeling anger into taking a boxing class. That's sublimation. It's transmuting that impulse that otherwise would be harmful into something that society deems as like productive.
Right.
And I do
something
think,
generative, creating something that could be of value to somebody else or yourself.
I mean, I think that even in the case of sublimation, the idea is not to over rely on any defense mechanism and really to get to the root of things, because once you feel more confident and capable of actually like addressing the underlying stuff, there's not as much need to protect because the sensitivity, kind of goes away. It takes the sting out of it once you get more practiced at like, oh, how do I actually deal with anger? How do I actually deal with sadness? And how do I change the circumstances in my life so that that stuff isn't being generated disproportionately?
Mm-hmm.
But, obviously, like I said, some defense mechanisms are predominantly more healthy than others.
Yeah. What are some of the bad ones?
I guess I do hesitate to put like a judgment because we all need them at some
lay out
point.
A hierarchy of defense mechanisms. That could be this episode.
You know what one frustrates me? I'll tell you what one frustrates me the most personally. Denial.
Okay.
Denial, I think, is the hardest one for me.
Yeah.
It can be sort of an elementary place in terms of like, well, this isn't even happening to me, so I'm just going to ignore it. And I live in a world that's, maybe too excessively focused on getting to the bottom of every single thing with as much honesty and authenticity as possible, because sometimes I find myself overwhelmed by it. But but denial, I've certainly found myself in various thicknesses of layers of denial in different parts of my life. And I'm sure there are things going on in my life now that I'm still somewhat in denial of, but maybe more unconsciously. What about you? What is your least favorite defense mechanism?
Yeah, I'm with you right now. I can't think of another one that bothers me more than denial.
Projection is another big one that can be really nasty, where you are experiencing something in yourself and you aren't really willing to acknowledge it or deal with it, so you act as if it's happening to someone else. You project that feeling onto them and treat them like they're the
right. That
problem.
To me is kind of like denial plus.
It's denial
Denial
plus.
is included in that package deal, but you also get transference. Is that what it's, or just rejection on its own?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Alain de Botton has a video about what makes people boring in conversations.
Ooh,
and
please.
He's like, it's when the listener consciously or subconsciously evaluates that the person speaking is is denying some truth. Like their way of seeing themselves is not at all aligned with how other people see them, and that becomes exhausting to hear a person talk about how much they were victimized by something, and you know that they were being an asshole in that situation, or like any type of misalignment of that, where a person's situation is obviously, it's so frustrating, and it's like hearing a person talk in that conversation just makes people not want to pay attention at all.
I actually find it really fascinating and amusing when I am with someone and they are recounting to someone, some third party, a story that also I was there for, that like also happened to me, and to hear what they focus on, the ways that they frame it, and the things that they neglect to tell that to me are, you know, kind of essential to the truth of it, is always fascinating, because it gives you such a direct way of looking at how does this person filter information, and what are they kind of, what's the narrative that they're trying to curate about themselves.
Yes, what's their pretension in this moment? How do they want to appear?
Yeah, I love that. And I just, you know, I just look right at them and I just kind of smile and nod, and it's like, yeah. And if they miss something that's like obvious that I feel compelled to chime in on, I will.
Call them out on that shit.
But I never want it to be like insulting or embarrassing.
Ever?
I don't know.
There are some situations where
maybe.
I think it's okay to insult or embarrass somebody.
Okay, what are they?
If they're blatantly lying in a way that would influence another person's behavior, and you can see them trying to manipulate somebody in that moment.
Really?
Yeah.
What
if
would you
somebody's
say?
doing that,
What would the manipulation have to be?
okay. They're getting someone to commit to either like hiring them or dating them or sleeping with them or something that is not easily reversed, or let's say moving in with them as a roommate, and I watch them like totally mistell a story and represent themselves as, you know, let's say somebody's pretending to be like a investment banker or something in order to sleep with a friend of mine. Right. And they're not at all that. I'm gonna be like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're not that. You don't do that. You know?
Yeah. Well, would you ever do it by asking them a very industry-specific question?
Oh, of course. I would like to have fun with the exposure and watch them struggle in it.
Define hedge fund and then just back up.
Sure. Can you help me with that? Yeah, and do it in the most innocent way possible.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it just depends on the situation whether I'm going to toy with it or sometimes I won't say anything. I'm not acting like I'm this much of a hero in every situation, you know.
Yeah.
But,
can you think of a time when you've lied in order to generate a result like that?
No.
Okay.
No. I'm sure somebody in my past could tell you of something that I did that reminds them of that, but
just making sure you're not projecting.
What do you mean? That
like
other people
overplacing your frustration? Well, actually, that's you know what? That's actually reaction formation is another defense mechanism where basically a trait about yourself that you don't like, something related to something you're experienced personally, you get excessively upset when like someone else is doing it. That's that's a more specific definition. That's not like the whole umbrella thing. But the example I always use is people who are very angry about stamping out homosexuality because they are uncomfortable with the part of themselves that
is a little gay.
Yeah. That's my favorite example of reaction formation. Hopefully it adds some clarity.
Cool. Yeah, I get it. Thank you. Sorry, was there a question? Or I forgot. I've lost our thread.
No, I was asking you if there was a time when you know that you had like lied to someone or manipulated someone to get a certain result, and you said you can't think of anything.
No, this is
a dead end.
I'm not that type of person.
I don't think so either.
It's not in my wheelhouse of tricks. No, I will do it in some situations when I think that there's like an unfair rule or policy in play in an institution. Then like, okay, this guy wouldn't let me into this fringe festival mixer the other night. He was like, oh no, it closes in 20 minutes and I can't let anyone else in. And then somebody came up and was like, "Hey, I left my credit card at the bar. Can I go back in to like get it and close out my tab?" And he was like, "Yeah, sure." And this is right after I had asked him to get in. I was like, "Oh yeah, actually, I left my credit card in there too. Can you let me in?" He was like, "No, you didn't. You just asked me." And I was like, "I know, I'm lying. Let me in." Like,
Your
I'll do
policy is
that.
dumb.
Yeah, exactly. Like that type of shit. I'll play those if it's something that I roll my eyes at. If I don't respect the
You're not hurting
rules of the
him.
institution, and somebody is needlessly like making me pour out my water bottle before I go into a bar, that one really bothers me. It's like, I need to bring water everywhere that I go. If you're going to provide me free water in there, great. But like, I'm not buying drinks and I have a right to drink water. So fuck you guys. I'm bringing my water bottle in there. I'm not smuggling alcohol. You weren't making any money off of me anyway.
Popular customer.
Yeah, I like the line, "I have a medical condition that requires me to drink from this water bottle."
Really? Are people like, oh,
No, I don't have any good stories or reactions to that.
Oh,
But I
okay.
did have a narcoleptic friend who would use that, and she had like some type of amino acids in the water bottle that would help her stay
Oh.
awake. And she was like, "I medically need to have this on me." And I was like, "Well, I medically need water.
yeah.
Like, I would die if I went without this for more than a day." So,
I think you should come up with a fancy Latin name for that condition.
okay.
Something with hydro in it.
Yeah,
I don't know anything
ooh.
else.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Sarah about this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
She'll
yeah,
come up
yeah.
with something good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Should
right.
we get into it?
Let's get into it. We got a question today that was sent to us in our email. And I want to remind everybody listening that you can email us your questions at freeadvicepodcast@gmail.com. I'll read it. Okay, this is from Princess Guacamole is the name that they've chosen for themselves. "Hey, advice givers. The topic is annoyance. I've always been someone who gets annoyed rather easily. For a long time, I thought I was just annoyed because, well, people are annoying. Eventually, I realized that 99% of the time, my annoyance was less about the annoyer and more about me. Generally, I fostered a lot more patience and acceptance, particularly towards strangers and things out of my control. But, of course, I still get annoyed or frustrated at times. And the things that tend to irk me most easily are the people closest to me. My parents, my partner, my well-meaning friends. I hate to be bogged down in my own petty irritation. Am I overanalyzing something that's perfectly normal in all close relationships? How do you deal with annoyance? And on the flip side, what's the best way to handle your partner's and friends' annoyances? Because if I'm working hard to work through what annoys me, then I'd hope they'd be doing the same to foster patience for me. Is that fair? Forever and always, Princess Guacamole."
All right. Princess brings us a great point about projection. Yeah.
What's that?
Projecting in the middle of the question, she was saying that she realized that a lot of the annoyance she was projecting on other people was actually things within her.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, like,
It's a great example.
assuming that they're getting annoyed? Or the
No,
things
no,
that...
no. The things that they're doing are annoying her because of something within
Oh,
her
I thought you
that
were
she
saying
could
that was
change.
reaction formation. I get those mixed up.
Oh, they're related. Reaction formation is like deciding that, no, yeah.
That is
Yeah,
more
I guess it
reaction
is.
formation.
I guess
Okay.
it is. I guess it is.
That's how you had just explained it, I think, a minute ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so the thing that we're mentioning here, something that a therapist recently pointed out to me about being bothered about people, is that if you're really annoyed by someone's behavior, you can often find that it is a part of resembles a part of yourself that you have
Right.
trouble accepting.
Right.
And if you can do a better job of accepting all parts of yourself, including your shadow side and the things that you think are unhelpful to you, then you can have more acceptance for other people. So I'd like to start this one out with a actionable advice, and then we can get into more theory of loving kindness meditation, what is called Metta, METTA. If you want to look that up online, I'm sure you can find them in whatever meditation app you use or on SoundCloud or YouTube. Try starting the day with a 10-minute loving kindness meditation. A lot of them will start with someone who you believe wants good things for you and who loves you, whether that's a parent or someone that's just very trusted, a mentor, and you'll imagine sending love their way and wishing good things for them and hoping that they can be happy and feel safe. And then it'll move down the ladder through somebody who you don't really know that well, but see from time to time, and then to somebody who challenges you and who is a nemesis or an enemy or an obstacle for you. And then it will have you feel those things about yourself as well.
Right.
And then radiate it out to the world and imagine wishing that for everybody who's alive and all living beings.
Yeah.
That can be, if you, it sounds very woo-woo to some people and like, what am I going to go full hippie and spend the rest of the day smoking doobies in the garden? Like, you can. If you
can.
want.
I think that would be a lovely afternoon.
Up to you. But, if you're pretending to be a high-powered investment banker, this may feel like a silly way to start your morning.
If you're pretending to be.
Like the guy in the example I gave earlier.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so this may feel out of character for you. You may have to overcome some internal resistance to doing something that sounds so strange or so touchy-feely. But I believe that this can be a very powerful tool for accepting others. It's just practicing this in the morning before anyone does anything that bothers you. I got this from the charisma myth, which I referenced, I think, in the last episode. So this book has been coming up a lot for me recently. But,
loving kindness, and it's loving kindness meditation.
What did I say?
No, you did say that.
Oh, it sounds like love.
It sounds like love and kindness, and sometimes it's abbreviated LKM, and
love those breves.
love them. But yeah, it's a really powerful tool for basically forcing you to generate a feeling of sort of compassion and warmth. For someone who it's easy to feel that for, like a relative you feel really fondly towards, someone who you have an very uncomplicated relationship towards.
Yeah,
Maybe
that keyword comes up a lot. Uncomplicated.
Yeah. And like I have my clients do this sometimes with like a dog.
Can be
sure,
a good
it
one.
can be a pet. It can be a baby in your life. That's often helpful, especially if
I
you're.
wouldn't recommend that.
Okay, well, I am recommending it because. Okay.
Bringing babies into your meditation session is just a recipe for a disaster.
Okay. Disagree. But it helps you to see when you segue into looking at yourself, it helps you connect with your own inner child. Where you think about like, oh, I would feel compassion for and love for this baby because there's this sense of, oh, this baby hasn't done anything to deserve being treated poorly or being judged. It's this representation of full like innocence.
We don't really prescribe free will or ascribe free will to babies. We don't see them as being responsible for their decisions. They're not like choosing yet.
Right. And so thinking of yourself and other people that may annoy you in these same terms of like, oh, we're all kind of just products of these circumstances in our lives and are probably doing our best, and can have some compassion for the circumstances that have arisen to shape other people and yourself into the people that you are in the present. So I think that's a great recommendation. I have some trouble relating to this question a little bit just because although sometimes annoyance is evoked for me, it's often something else. Like I'm often more concerned about evoking annoyance for someone else than who's evoking it in me. Because I guess I always kind of like have just swallowed that sense of like, or more often than not swallowed that sense of like, oh, someone's doing something that's bothering me. I often assume I could be doing something different to evoke that type of behavior and what could I tinker with in order to get a different outcome for them. But I think that over assumes control of the circumstances. Like sometimes what someone else is doing has literally nothing to do with me. But I do think a lot of times our interactions are filtered through our previous experiences and what other people have done to us and what are our conceptions of ourselves. And generally to encourage a a less judgmental attitude overall is helpful to decrease feelings of annoyance by other people, evoked by other people.
Yes. And I want to ask you when do you feel annoyance? Can you think of a situation recently or prominently in your mind that do you feel like you have a right to be annoyed by things?
Often I don't.
What about if someone lets you down in a romantic relationship? Does that
Yeah, that
count as
happens
annoyance?
all the time. And
What emotion do you attach to that? Because I've heard
disappointment
Okay.
more than annoyance. And then again, if it is like disappointment or annoyance, I will often try to, in order to falsely kind of give myself the reins back, imagine like, what can I do to change this behavior, either to not engage with this person or to treat them differently and to see if I can prevent that to be more appealing to them, or reduce my expectations to not be disappointed or annoyed when someone doesn't act in accordance with what I want, which isn't great. I'll be honest. It's not a great way to go.
Okay. I'm trying to parse out the difference between disappointment and annoyance now.
I mean, the tone to me, like disappointment is more like sadness and
I got this.
yeah. Go ahead,
How
please.
are you feeling right now?
Self-conscious.
Okay.
Mostly. But please.
Yeah. I think that annoyance is hope followed by anger, and disappointment is hope followed by sadness.
Mm-hmm.
But both of them require an expectation of something good
Yeah.
first. So people will try and shield themselves from others' annoyance or disappointment by lowering their expectations or asking them not to expect me. I do this, especially at the start of romantic relationships, because I am afraid of disappointing or annoying people in the same way that I think you mentioned about annoyance.
Mm-hmm.
For me, disappointment's a bigger one, though, than annoyance.
Yeah.
Yeah, so is it indicative of your general tendency towards anger or sadness? Yes. Morgan
Yes.
is nodding, yes.
I'm rarely angry. I'm more often sad, or I'm angry at myself. It's the direction of it is normally, sometimes even if I feel it might be appropriate to send it outwards, it often ends up coming back in at me. And I think it's twofold. Being raised in an environment where I was made to feel like other people's emotions were my responsibility. So there's that creates more of a sense of, I can't change, like this other, I'm going to be disappointed. So like, I need to take responsibility for all these and be, have some sense of control over these circumstances in order to feel safe. And then the second thing being, tending towards sadness over anger anyway. Because again, not being allowed to like express those kinds of, I don't know, emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And not wanting to, because observing my parents for a long time being so conflict oriented with each other and yelling and stuff, and it just didn't look good. And I know that I work with a lot of people who I think are afraid to experience anger because of the models that were given to them.
You've seen Inside Out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, spoiler alert, if anybody... What? No, that's sincere.
No, you're right. You're right.
That's a
You're
movie
right.
worth seeing, and if you haven't seen it and you want to, skip past this section. That movie is about the value of sadness. Sadness is the unexpected hero of the movie, and it's the story tells us that sadness is useful because when a person feels hurt, if they allow themselves to feel and express sadness, it brings other people closer to them and allows them to heal. I would love to see an Inside Out about the value of anger, because it's something that I've always felt is an immature sadness, that like anger is just a person who's uncomfortable with sadness dealing with their hurt in that way. But I think that there is value. It's definitely it has more speed to it, and there are some situations when that's important because
Yeah.
there's a narrow window of opportunity where your reaction can make things better. And if anger motivates you to react quickly, you could save a life. You could,
Yeah.
these aren't situations that I find myself
Yeah.
in every day.
Yeah.
But there's a good evolutionary reason that we experience anger. And I would like to write even, that I should stop asking for other people to create the things that I want to see. But a story about the value of that emotion.
My one of my old supervisors on the psych unit of the hospital that I worked at, she did a fantastic group about anger and would talk about how anger can be such a productive emotion. It can help us to identify when injustice has occurred and to motivate change in a way that another emotion, like you said, that's not as strong can't do. And, annoyance is kind of, I guess, the baby brother of anger in that sense, where it's like, if something that someone does annoys you, it could really be indicating a pattern of behavior in them that you wish to change. And you may have legitimate reasons for wanting that to change. Maybe it's small instances of feeling disrespected or, I don't know, some second example.
Is annoyance anything but muted anger?
Good question.
Like anger at a low volume? Does anything different happen in your body or the way that you'd want to react between being annoyed and being angry? Like,
What does annoyance feel like in your body?
Yeah, ball up my fist slightly, clench my jaw a little bit, ruffle my nose for a second, but don't keep it that way. It's like it's all the reactions of anger, just not embraced in fists flying and screaming. It's just a slight, like a little bit louder in my tone of voice, a little bit firmer.
Yeah.
It's like a baby step towards anger in my mind.
For me, it's more of like a crawling, itchy kind of just like, ooh, like.
Oh, so there's disgust in there too for you with annoyance.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
I'd love to do a day where we just where we suggest emotional equations. Like this emotion is this after this or this minus that. That'd be cool.
Okay.
I'd
Do you
like
think
to
that we could
research
fill a whole episode with just that?
Definitely.
Okay. I'm not that confident.
This could be a series. No, that's a book.
I mean, yeah, it could be a book.
Absolutely. Like,
Short
I mean, they write entire books on just jealousy or.
That's true.
Yeah, definitely
right.
we could.
Would it be the best? Would this be the best medium for that?
That's just what we're doing. Maybe not. I think it would be an interesting conversation, and we could put them out as special episodes or whatever.
Jealousy is sexy anger.
I would like to have that conversation with you. I think you'd be a great person to work that stuff out with and come up with examples for it.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
So, yeah, exactly. If you'd rather write it into a book or whatever, fine. But
I definitely wouldn't rather write it into a book.
These would be cool because they could be like standalone episodes for weeks that we have something else. It doesn't need to be timely or be responding to somebody's question in the moment. And then we could put that out like over Christmas or whenever we're not going to meet. Yeah, just a thought.
Totally. So I want to get back to Princess Guacamole's question.
Yes.
Because I feel like we've been kind of like dancing around it and we've pulled out a couple of the threads. But let's look back to the core of what she's really asking for and how can we help her.
Would you like me to reread the questions
maybe
at
the
end?
bottom part. Yeah.
Yes. Am I overanalyzing something that's perfectly normal in all close relationships?
Oh, to be annoyed in close relationships. Yeah.
There's two quick parts of that question. One, is it normal? Two, am I overanalyzing it? It is normal to be annoyed. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that what is the double-edged sword, let's say, of close relationships is that when you get the intimacy that, of a close relationship where, you can really exchange with someone on a deep level, each other's flaws, foibles, you spend a lot of time together, you understand them, that does open the door for more experiences with them to be sort of negative or to irk you because it's like you're holding so much information about them and you also have a lot of history that potentially would compound any triggers that you initially had with them that, a more superficial relationship you would never kind of necessarily get into. Like you encounter more situations with them. Like you're staying in the same house, or even sharing a bed if it's your partner, or, having sex, other things where it's like there's this intimacy and intensity and openness and vulnerability that just allows for so much mixing and mingling of people's different points of view. And so I think, of course, there are going to be bumps in that melding process the more you interact.
This question reminds me of the argument for pessimism, that perhaps you are expecting things to be too ideal. And if you started each day imagining how terribly wrong it could go, and you would feel less less upset every time that somebody was 5 minutes late. Or
perhaps more
other
realism than pessimism.
No,
maybe.
pessimism.
You want it to be pessimism.
The argument that I'm recalling is not my own, and it's an argument for pessimism.
Okay.
As a
shoot low.
Really though, of like imagine all the things that can go bad, and you will be calm the rest of the day, because you're not expecting that everyone will be perfectly on time and everything runs. It's a way of freeing yourself from that constant disappointment.
Yeah. So I think that if you're aware of, in each of these specific relationships, like your mom, your partner, your close friends, what are the things that tend to annoy you, like specifically the annoyances, and maybe even writing them down so that they're just they're not new things that you have to analyze and go into every time they bubble up. Right. It's just something that you can go, oh, that's on my list. Like I'm just noting that that's happening. That's number one. Or that's number 2, or that's number 3, and it's happening.
Keep the list on the fridge,
and that's okay.
On a magnet,
not somewhere where they can see it. Ideally, but just having that internal classification system of like, this isn't a new issue. It's bumping up against something I'm aware is there, and there may be a solution or a way to kind of massage that experience to make it better for yourself, but and identifying it as something known.
At that point, once you've put multiple check marks next to the same behavior that you've already listed, then it's time for you to start coming up with a request to ask that person. Then you can non-violently communicate, hey, I've seen you do X, and when you do it, I feel blank. I need blank, so could you please blank?
Right. But sometimes when we don't write things down, or we don't have that data collection system where we're not noticing the behavior enough, or we're not aware how much we're noticing it, or we're in denial, you never get over that hump of feeling like, oh, this is something worth bringing up to them. Because often we convince ourselves, like in the moment, oh, it's fine. But over and over and over again, especially if it's something that that a request for them to change it would be pretty easy. Sometimes we build things up in our heads to be like these giant monsters, and really it would be a matter of a request that someone would be happy to fulfill. Yeah. And so I think doing the self-assessment piece of knowing, okay, what's the real cost of allowing this annoyance to go unexamined, will really help motivate you to be like, you know what, that actually is costing me a lot of my energy, a lot of my sanity. And it probably it might not cost them as much to make small changes. But in that differentiation process, I'm sure you'll encounter things that maybe it's disproportionate in the other way. Your annoyance is disproportionate, and the cost of that, do you know what I'm saying? It's something that they hold very dearly, and you're not that annoyed by it, and you need to maybe just be aware that that's a problem for you for some other reason.
Yes. And as a second step, you may find a lot of growth in following that other reason, digging down that rabbit hole of, okay, why is this a problem for me? Anytime that you find yourself resisting an uncomfortable emotion, it is a good sign that emotion is a road to some type of self-discovery and self-knowledge that can help you navigate your life better from that point on, if you're brave enough and humble enough to follow it where it leads you. It's like a thread on the edge of a shirt that is annoying. You can take your scissors and just cut off the thread, or you can pull on it and unravel the whole shirt and show the world your beautiful tatas.
I was wondering what the positive conclusion of that was going to be.
Sharing your milk.
Sharing your milk. Yeah, I think that's great.
These babies out there are thirsty.
Yeah.
Another reason not to meditate on babies. You start meditating on them, they're going to start crawling down your inside and milking from the inside out.
Totally.
come right out of your
Totally.
head in that beautiful, happy place that you've put yourself in mentally. Baby will start crawling down your face, down your throat. Oh, now it's sucking milk from the inside.
And it's pooping in you.
It's pooping inside of you. Now you got a baby shit heart. Good luck loving somebody with that.
So
Having
listen,
to tell them that right before you have sex for the first time. Hey, I just want you to know, a couple months ago I was diagnosed with baby shit heart.
it's not contagious, but
it
you
is
will need to change my
permanent.
diaper after sex.
Yeah.
So I found out recently, I didn't know this, but I was an emergency C-section.
Okay.
And
C-section baby.
oh, you too?
Yeah.
Little high five in the
Not
middle of our
emerge.
table.
Mine was planned, but
Oh, okay.
that's how I
Okay.
got that sexy birthday, February 1st.
Ooh, nice. I shit in the womb.
Ooh, you did.
Yeah.
Don't babies shit all the time in the womb? How do babies get rid of their waste? They're not.
I think it
perfectly
goes
efficient
in and out of
machines.
I think it's the umbilical cord.
Okay. That's how they get rid of their waste.
And so
Your first shit is right after you're born. Interesting.
This is fascinating. I don't know, but I did something and they had to like get me out immediately because there was a risk that I would like breathe it, ingest it, and like die.
That would be so. Yeah.
Really shit the bed on this one.
Yeah. Just choke on your own shit and die. Yeah, that's a Morgan move right there.
Before I even get into the air, before I'm even free of amniotic fluid. Ugh, the worst.
Can't you do anything right?
Can't you do anything right? Or are you just like shitting in your own, sitting in your own filth, shitting in your own air all the time? Atmospecies.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I know. I was like, wow, starting with like shame, toxic shame from an early age. Anywho, let's get back to.
Okay. That was part one of the question.
Right.
How do you deal with annoyance?
Okay. Right. So me personally, like rarely feel it. And when I do, sometimes stomach it. But every once in a while I collect enough data to be like, okay, probably if I said something to this person about like, okay, here's an example. Rob always leaves my toilet seat up.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did I today?
I have no idea.
Did not.
Okay. This is because I finally brought it up to him because I realized if it's something that bothers me, it's stupid not to say anything because it's an easy action for him to correct, right?
Absolutely. And it doesn't hurt me.
Doesn't hurt him at all. I mean, it doesn't annoy me that much. I can also just put the toilet seat down. But there's so many times in life where I tell myself, well, I could just put the toilet seat down. And I don't bother to say, you know what? I actually really think, especially in my house, it's your responsibility to put the toilet seat down if you found it down. It's silly. But it's about taking all of those opportunities to kind of validate to yourself that your voice matters and like the things that will help your life run a little smoother and won't inconvenience or hurt anyone else are worth doing.
And it's worth inconveniencing or hurting other people a little, even a lot at times.
Yeah. It depends on how.
I was about to say a little bit, and then I was like, oh, I'm minimalizing this. Sometimes it will really
Yeah,
hurt or
sometimes it
inconvenience
really
people,
like
and
a
you
breakup.
Still can ask. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a major inconvenience and a major pain
hugely
for the person
inconvenient.
that you're breaking up with. And it's
Lots of
worth going
errands and
if you're
chores.
unhappy or believe you'd be happier in another situation.
Yeah. I think we should talk about should we talk about times where you shouldn't, or should we move to what should she do when the question about other people in her life having the same experience of being annoyed? What direction which branch would you like to choose?
Times when you shouldn't. When
Yeah.
should you not express to a person a request? When they're dealing with something that they or you evaluate as more important at the moment, and that seems to be taking up all their mental space. So if that day that if I'd come over here having just been dumped and I was distraught and Morgan started or interrupted me, even worse, to ask if I could start putting the toilet seat down, I'd be like, really? Is that really the priority right now? Is that like your pain over that is,
Right. Yeah. Okay. So do you feel like there are other things other than timing?
So the best
that
time
affect
to
this?
complain to somebody is when they're really happy.
You want to really just shit all over their good mood.
Yeah. No, when they're at peace is really what
Okay.
I think.
I don't know.
And it's not like the first moment of peace that they've gotten in a long time, but once they're kind of like,
When they're chilling.
yeah, once they're back to their normal, whatever that is.
I mean, do you think that there are certain types of requests or annoyances that by and large are just things that we need to just get used to and stomach?
There are some things that you should own as your problem, is how I would word that.
Yeah.
Uh,
When it like deviates from the norm.
I've done this with the sound of people eating.
Oh,
There are times when I think, when I'm judging it as under their control and they can close their mouth, and then like your jaw, for instance, makes a noise
Yes.
while you're eating. I'm like, she doesn't have any control over that. That's my issue. That's not something that I should ask her to fix for me.
I certainly can't fix it.
Right, and I don't. So I have dealt with that pretty effectively within myself.
Yeah.
Just like, that's something I accept. I like this person, and I would rather eat near them than be away from them when we're eating, so that I don't have to experience that amount of annoyance that I feel.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Can you describe to me the exact feeling of annoyance when my jaw clicks?
Describe the feeling. Tensing. Shrugging up of my shoulders.
Okay.
Like either spreading my fingers or balling them up.
So what is it about the jaw that gives you that very physical sort of visceral?
What is it about the jaw? I don't think that it's like the jaw is a bad. I think
this example.
Why I'm sensitive to the sound of people eating is because I
Okay.
believe that was taught to me as a kid, and I'm modeling my mom's
Okay.
reaction to it. Is
Okay.
That you don't chew with your mouth open or talk with food in your mouth or make any kind of noise like that. That like I was taught disgust at those things.
Okay. So is that something that you feel
Like it's disrespectful to me.
like you would
personally.
want to change that in order to be less bothered by people that are going to do it
I
anyway?
definitely want to be less bothered by it.
Okay.
And I have made some improvement in that area.
Okay, how? I would love to. I think that probably PG here would love to hear it as well.
Recognizing that it's something that I struggle with.
Yeah.
And that
Knowing
a
the
lot
origin
of,
is
a lot of
helpful.
people do. Yes. Seeing where it came from, asking myself logically, like, does it do anything that, is it that bad?
Yeah.
Like, what does it prevent me from doing? And
Right.
is that something that's like a physical barrier, or is it something that I can overcome mentally?
Yeah.
In this case, I think that it's mentally. It was also helpful to me just to hear that a lot of other people experience this and have it as a huge pet peeve. And then I've even read that it's like a genetically linked thing, that certain people have a gene that makes them really dislike the sound of other people's chewing. It seems like a weird thing to. But,
yeah. Yeah.
And in my case, like a general slide towards more liberalism and openness.
Yeah.
Of like not needing everything to be perfectly in order and clean and pristine, like allowing going camping and seeing the beauty in eating with dirty hands, or just like recognizing, reprioritizing things
Yeah.
has helped me
Right.
let go of some of that control.
Yeah, I think that kind of is a parallel to what you were saying about me, where you were like, well, I weighed the two options of like, well, I want to eat close to you and this thing bothers me and you can't help it. So therefore, like, I need to make that judgment call of, is it worth more for me to do this, or is it worth more for me
Yes.
to do this? And I think that's a great system for evaluating with some extent of like of objectivity. Okay, what are the factors at play here? Because it also helps you to really zero in on all I just said that. I don't know.
You're good.
Sometimes I say a full sentence and I'm like, did I just say the same thing 2 times in a row in the exact same way?
Sometimes you do.
Yeah, sometimes I do.
Yeah. I love you anyway.
Thanks. But yeah, kind of going through that process and identifying, okay, what things go in the column of things that I can't control or can't request to be changed, and what things go in the column of things that I can either understand better for myself and therefore release my attachment to, or just allow, just permit. With eating, my dad was a really messy eater, and my mom was like a super clean freak, neat freak, and had a lot of rules and like issues with the ways that my dad would do that. And so I internalized a lot of that stuff and started to find the way that my dad ate to be gross.
Yeah.
And I recognize now that was like an internalization, just like you said, of my mom's rule system, and that sense that, well, he just should be doing it differently, and how dare he I don't know, like behave outside of the bubble of like containment. And it got to the point where I could like feel the physical repulsion, kind of like what you were saying, just in the way that he chose to eat, as if it was something that was a personal attack on me.
Yes.
And I totally took that on from my mom, and it doesn't affect me in the slightest. And I wonder if there's even a way to kind of like incrementally scale back, instead of just, because sometimes you can't be like, well, this is silly, I should just drop it. You know, I know that it's annoys me and it's not justified, because you can't always just, right when you become conscious of something, totally put it down. So in that case, it would be like, okay, like, can I observe him eating that way and just be in the same room? And like, okay, so what are the things that are gross about that? Okay, can I sit a little bit closer to him? Okay, can I try to rewrite some of the scripts in my head about, you know, why this is a problem?
Yeah. Kind of an exposure therapy you're suggesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. I want to also point out, if it's specifically with a partner,
Yeah.
but in all these relationships, it's often about something deeper. If something keeps annoying you and it doesn't feel like that annoys you about everybody,
Yeah.
it's never about the dishes, is I think the expression when you have a fight with
Yeah.
your partner. If you're mad at them for leaving a dirty dish in the sink, it's probably not about the dish isn't that big of a deal, but if you believe that is symbolic of or representative of something else, some need of yours that they're not meeting, the dish will hurt to see it there, because maybe it's that you feel like they don't consider you, that they don't think of how things will affect you, and seeing that dish is just another sign of that belief. And then as much as possible, you should try to get to the root of that issue in conversation with them and explain that feeling to them, rather than just complaining about the dish and then being like, why do you freak out about dish? It's not that big of a deal. There's always, it's a proxy battle.
Yes, I used to listen to this fantastic podcast that I don't think has released any new episode in like years, but it was called Honey.
Yeah.
And this girl would interview couples about their fights, and she would frequently encounter like similar types of fights, and one of them was like the dishes or like chores.
Yeah.
Another category of fights was driving, and then another one was board games. And she kind of theorized that the arguments that were about chores, like dishes, were about splitting responsibilities.
Yeah.
Sometimes one partner thinks that there's an inequitable split of responsibilities. And so that dish always being left in the sink is, like you said, you don't care about me, you don't value my time, you're not taking responsibility for what you need to take responsibility of. That line isn't in the middle of the spectrum. The second one about driving is issues of control.
Yeah.
And then the third one with board games is how seriously do you take rules? And understanding that those different things were, like you said, proxy battles for these larger potential incompatibilities or just discrepancies.
Yeah.
And, you know, coming to terms with, okay, some things we can bridge the gap a little bit and come to an understanding and develop solutions, but some things we're going to have to just agree to disagree on.
Yeah.
And, you know, in some partnerships or some relationships in your life, it becomes not possible. The toxicity that's evoked from those, what starts as sort of little annoyances, can add up, and you can wake up one day and you're in a situation where it's all negative things, and you've let those things like consume and overtake the positive things that you're getting out of a relationship. So I guess I just want to point out that annoyances aren't always just these like, you know, cute little things that we can deal with and put in a nice little box. Like sometimes it's more than that. And I think it's important to pay attention to the balance of annoyances versus like pleasures of any relationship that you're in.
I agree. Yeah, do some type of a pros and cons list. And it's also normal to be evaluating whether a person is worth the effort of loving them or of maintaining the relationship in its current form. It's true of romantic relationships as well as friendships, other types of partnerships.
Yeah. Well, and with family too.
Yeah.
Like family, all of these relationships are more successful when you set appropriate boundaries for, you know, how you want to interact with them, how frequently, when, in what contexts, what are the rules for, you know, safe play, so to speak, so that you can get, you know, you can skew the interactions towards this keeps us both in a place of, you know, joy, enjoyment of each other, versus territory that's actually harmful for both parties.
Yes. I'd like to posit that the fundamental relationship error is putting somebody into a role and set of boundaries that you think that they are supposed to adhere to, rather than evaluating the idiosyncrasies of your specific relationship with that individual and designing a role for each other.
Yeah, I think this is something that is a huge advantage of the type of the relationship model that Rob and I are trying to do, you know, in our own lives, not necessarily with each other, but of open relationships and polyamory, because it forces you to talk about, okay, what are your boundaries? What do and don't you want me to do with other people? Whereas, you know, most people who just enter in and out of traditionally monogamous relationships never bother to say, hey, what is your definition of monogamy and what is your definition of love? Because there are still discrepancies. Yeah. And again, expectations that can lead to annoyance and disappointment and anger.
Be a general in your own love life, not a foot soldier. Don't just take orders from the world you were born into. Decide for yourself what the strategy is.
Yeah, don't be a sheep.
Yeah. No, I do feel like the boyfriends are supposed to do this and girlfriends are supposed to do this. That's like good for children who are dating. That really, like when people are just starting out, it's nice to give them a script, and
structure,
that's what culture does, and that's probably an important step along the way. But as a person matures,
you outgrow it.
Hopefully. I think a lot of people stay in the adolescent stage of transactional values, and like, I give this thing and my partner needs to give me that, because that's what either men and women or you know, whatever their relationship is, that's what they do. And that's what it says in the love stories that I've read, or what the books that, you know, or the Bible for many people. Yeah. And that can be tough for you because you live in a different world than the one that those stories were written in, even if they're modern
and
stories.
Stories are stories.
Yeah, and you are not the characters in those stories. But a good starting point for kids. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but real intimacy, which certainly I don't have nearly enough experience.
You are the expert on real intimacy. I've told my friends.
As I stated before in my TED Talk about how I don't properly understand yet what is my responsibility and what is other people's responsibility in relationships. Real intimacy.
Yeah, what is it?
Is with real people and not stories.
Okay. Is that possible?
It's not a fantasy. Well, I mean, everything that we do is filtered through our perceptions. And so it's like, are we even interacting? Are we just in the Matrix? Do we ever really touch each other?
A little bit. Kind of not is my answer to those two questions.
Right. Well, it's like, do we ever really touch each other and interact? Or is there always like, is it just cells touching each other and interacting with membranes in between them? It's a little semantic-y.
You can never totally know a person. You can never really touch them, but you can get closer. And I think it's worth doing. Even knowing that you'll never actually make contaect.
Yeah.
It will feel like you've touched them, and they will feel like they were
you
touched.
Will come.
And that is important. You may. Some people have conditions.
Right. So I want to talk about when she says on the flip side, what happens on the
We're probably
flip side.
sacrificing lightning round, which I'm totally fine with, but I'm just giving you a warning.
We can talk really fast in the lightning round.
There's probably not going to be lightning round now, but
Oh
okay.
my god, I'm so sad.
It's okay. We can save them
I'll
for next
process my disappointment.
Yeah, good. The next question, is that what you're asking? How do you
The
do?
last part
Oh.
of her
And
question.
on the flip side, what's the best way to handle your partner's and friends' annoyances? Yeah. So they're annoyed with you or with other people, perhaps, and they're telling you about it,
that
or you just perceive it.
well, that sense of like, are they working on it?
Oh,
How
right,
do
right.
you all of that stuff?
Well, I
What do
think
you
it's two separate questions.
Okay.
What's the best way to receive criticism is how I'm
Right,
reading. What's
right.
the best way to handle your partners and friends' annoyances?
Yeah.
Or receive their gripes about another person, somebody, let's say, complaining about their husband to you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
I think
that's-
encouraging them to look at all the perspectives and get as much data out of that as possible, the same way
Yeah.
we have, and doing it in a way that sort of models like compassion and empathy for those circumstances.
Yes. One of the best tools can be advising them to imagine themselves as the person who is annoying them and imagining what might hurt them and what might be painful for them. And that could encourage some compassion for that individual.
Yeah. Yeah.
And validating is always good. Be like, yeah, if you believe it.
Yeah.
Don't
Just
don't
yeah.
blindly be like, oh yeah, everything you're feeling is so understandable, and I would be doing the same thing.
I mean that was a good expression of validation though.
Yeah, but I have caught myself slip into doing that automatically before, and
Right.
sometimes I think it's loving somebody better is challenging them and saying,
Yeah.
"Do you really feel that way?" Or like, "Where?"
Yeah. Asking them.
Yeah.
Asking them, how do you want to be loved? Do you
Telling
want
them
me
if you
to-
think that they're deceiving themselves or that they're full of shit on something, that is a form of loving a person that can be scary to do, but can ultimately be helpful to a person.
But I think ultimately you have to know from that person, is that their ideal? Because some people don't want that. But some people specifically articulate, yeah, I rely on my friends to
Sometimes
challenge me.
Loving a person is giving them something that they don't want.
Okay.
Like, think about parents punishing a kid who's misbehaved. That is still love in my mind.
But
Not
but
that it has to be that
I
power
think
difference.
that in that case, it's more like trusting that the best version of that child, if they were capable of understanding what you're doing, would understand. You know what I mean?
But in some way, we parent each other on different topics. Like, growth is not
Sure.
linear or in one direct. Like there are some things that you are my parent on, and I am your parent on, because that's just like you have more experience in the psychology space, or I have more experience in the comedy or performance space, so that like we
Yeah.
will sometimes push each other, say something that makes them uncomfortable, and that's
But-
like a form of
But
loving.
we
and
have
helping
a
person grow.
spoken and unspoken, I guess, but a spoken agreement that those are our values and that we want the other. That's our very much what we see as our role in each other's lives. And some people may not want that type of thing to come in every friendship they have.
Sure. Then I think that they have a right to ask you for that. But I don't think you need to wait for a person's explicit permission if you're close with them to challenge them, and then they can tell you if they don't like that, and you can choose to respect that. Or
You can cross the line, I guess.
Yeah, like it's okay to cross the line with people sometimes,
Yeah.
as long as it's not an irreversible thing that's going to like
Yeah.
scar them forever, and you can be the judge of that. And like some things you may scar them forever, and it's still not your fault. That inadvertently can happen.
That's true.
In
That's
affecting
true.
people, if you are an influential person, you will also cause some damage, and that damage may be a source of great growth for a person, or it may just be something that hurts them until they die and they see it as unnecessary. But like, if you're going to make an impact in the world, there will be
Yeah.
you're not going to be only positive in
Yeah.
everybody's life.
There's gonna be friction.
Right. Martin Luther King. Terrible adulterer. But I have a dream,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah. I don't know how it was relevant, but yeah.
Like his, not to get into a huge psychoanalysis of him, but one of the costs of he cheated on his wife a lot.
Right.
And
I know what adulterer means.
Yeah, okay. Like, he was a complete human being who had a great vision, and
Right.
he sought power, and he followed his dream.
Right.
And maybe related to that was cheating on his wife. Like there is a cost.
She's like, hey, I'm kind of annoyed because you make all these great speeches, but you keep cheating on me.
Yeah,
Feeling a little annoyed.
right.
And he's like, sounds like a you problem.
Yeah. There is a version of him that is a non-cheater, I think, that is more suppressed. Or, maybe there was a healthier way for him to deal with that, and maybe he doesn't cheat, or I don't know. But you know what I'm trying to get at is that, like, he could have been a much less impactful person and not cheated and not given the speeches and led the marches. They may be.
I guess I just don't really see the connection where, like, the great speeches follow the cheating.
If you're going to speak to that many people in front of the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Monument,
You had to have
and
your
all
dick
those
sucked. You have to get your dick wet.
There's got to be someone under that podium going.
Right.
It's just
You're
not
right.
going to be
You're right.
able to put that much oomph into the speech.
I have a wet dream.
That's good.
Thank you.
That's good. You just move a little bit away from the
Oh my God. I can't handle that joke again. I can't handle it again. I don't want to hear. I thought I was over it. I'm not.
I set
I
you up.
can't.
I was applauding you for your great joke and everything.
Because,
pulled the rug out from
yeah,
under you.
you know what I think it is? I think
What?
it does. I think even though I acknowledge that I'm loud and all this stuff,
Yeah.
like, oh, tee-hee, it does kind of shut me down in the moment. And I struggle with feeling shut down.
This is good, though,
with
that
this
you're
podcast.
expressing this very well, and this is an opportunity for us to model this type of communication for our listeners. So tell me more about
We
the
love
shutdown
modeling
photo.
that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So first, at first it's like that pang of kind of like annoyance or anger.
Okay.
But then it's like I don't feel. We have this established joke now, so I don't really feel like I can be like, please don't make that joke. But then I internalize it, and then I'm just like, okay, so I either have to like kind of like retaliate in a way that's like humorous, or I just kind of my default that I don't do as much, at this stage of my development is like, okay, like automatically concluding, okay, so therefore no one wants to hear me. Rob specifically doesn't want to hear me. I'm being too loud. I've ruined everything. I very quickly go down this like slippery slope that leads to like, you're worthless.
Do you have any judgments about that reaction?
Do I have any judgments about that reaction?
Yes.
Like that it's stupid?
Is that your judgment? I wasn't telling you it's stupid.
I'm telling me it's stupid.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
you're seeing a live thing right now. This is happening.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, it's fucking annoying. I'm annoyed. I start out being annoyed by someone else, and then I get annoyed by myself, and then I just don't want to fucking deal with myself.
Okay. What do you wish your reaction was? Can you imagine a better
Indifference.
one? Indifference.
Total indifference would be great.
What would that look like if I go, can you just move a little bit away from the mic? What would you
Like,
do?
I don't
What
even
would you
know,
feel?
because I'm like, do I give him the finger? Do I have... It's like, am I doing something on the mic that's a reaction to this? Or am I like, do I even let out a nonverbal signal that I'm frustrated with that?
So this
I don't know.
annoyance that you experience whenever I make this joke, what does it come from?
Being shushed and told that I was like too loud and all that stuff.
And do you believe those things about yourself? That you're too
Yeah,
loud?
to some extent. Yeah.
And what does it mean if you're too loud?
Yeah, it goes right to like a place of not deserving to have my voice heard, neither the noise itself or the content. And I recognize this is like irrational, emotional bullshit. Like, I'm aware of that, of course.
I'm not judging it right now. I'm just
Oh,
trying
I know you're not.
talk you through it.
Oh, I
and-
know.
and lay it all out. I
Right.
think that will help you deal with it on your own.
Oh, yeah. Well, then it just, I cycle through this like self-perpetuating annoyance at myself. Even if maybe one way of dealing with it would just be like, I would prefer if you didn't make that joke as much. but then I'm avoiding this opportunity for growth. But it's also this like pain point that is uncomfortable, and I don't know, maybe I wish I were more resolved on it. I think it was also that I would get like loud and excited when I was like happy about something, and then that was like the expression of mine that got shut down. So it led me to conclude like, oh, I should just be like miserable and silent.
It's a very cruel thing to do, to make fun of a person's laugh or smile,
Right.
and to make them
Yes.
self-conscious at those moments when
Yeah.
they might finally escape
So
self-consciousness.
you admit that you're cruel.
Yeah. Yeah, I was cruel to you.
Cool.
But even being cruel is
A way to be kind.
a way to be kind. I don't know. Now I'm just talking out of my ass.
I
But,
know.
okay.
You're talking out of my ass.
If you'd like to give me advice, I find that sometimes when you hit a dead end or get frustrated with a problem in yourself, you like to focus on other people's issues.
Oh,
right?
me,
And
personally.
Then,
Yeah.
and then help them with that and listen more, right? Is that not
Sure.
a reaction that you've experienced?
Yeah.
Say that I take responsibility for the audio portion of this podcast and keeping that up to a certain standard, both for the listener's experience and for my own portfolio of building work as an audio engineer. You got a real smug smile on your face now. Like,
Yeah, I'm so
"Oh,
annoyed."
geez, where the fuck is he about to go with this? Is he about to defend himself and say that I was wrong? Is that it?
No.
What are you
Please.
thinking?
No. I don't want to even share what I'm thinking. I don't want to
Okay.
hear a single.
Okay. So imagine that I'm making this podcast with somebody else.
Yeah.
Her name
Dorgan.
can be Dorgan, sure. So I'm hosting with this person, Dorgan, who is a great host, has a great voice, says really interesting things, and like once every hour makes a loud
On
noise.
the hour.
Once an hour on the hour makes a loud noise that I assume the listeners it jars them and brings them out of the flow of the experience and reduces the overall listenability of the podcast and the professional sheen, the like production value of it. What would be the best way for me to address that problem with that person?
Well, this becomes a question of like, can I help it or not? You know, can Dorgan help it or not?
Is microphone technique a learnable skill? I know the answer
Rob
to
is
that.
mouthing,
Absolutely.
yes, it is.
Yeah, it is. Because people learn it and teach it.
Right. I honestly, you know what? It's funny because we were talking before. I don't even know if it was on this podcast or another podcast, not another podcast. It was definitely on Free Advice. I'm not a part of any other podcasts this episode or another episode or off mic about how like sometimes this process of recording feels really heavy to me. And I think it is because I feel restrained volume wise.
Okay.
So it's connected to a larger problem whereby I don't feel free to be that maybe happier, more buoyant, more playful version of myself because I'm kind of trying to keep the volume at a certain place. But then every once in a while, once every episode, usually I would say, have an outburst that evokes that response. So that, I mean, I'm just assuming that then I'm only doing it once.
Per episode or so? Yeah, there's lesser times. I don't say it every episode, and there's some episodes where there's
Right.
several laughs that peak. And
So I guess the question I have is, does the sort of depressed, like, does getting a slightly depressed version of me with no peaking audio, like, is that better or
it's a false dichotomy.
well, is it? I don't know.
Yes, there are radio programs where people laugh big and they just turn their head away from the microphone when they do it, and that's just become a reaction that they're
Yes.
accustomed to of not doing it into the microphone. But like, if you know,
Are you trying to shame me into retraining my laughs?
I think I'm trying to teach you how to use the microphone system more effectively to capture your expressions. How about that?
Let's avoid shame at all costs. No. It's not that you.
I'm interested in that.
You're
topic
not.
Of when is shame ever useful? And if
Yeah.
is
Well,
that-
I don't think that you're like actively trying to shame me, but I do think it's I think it's a conditioning. I think you're conditioning me.
I have immense love for you, and
I know.
would not try to create an argument that you are bad at your core, or like
I know.
try and poke at flaws and tell you that that's how I judge you or identify you.
Right.
I think that you make mistakes as much as I do or less. I don't know.
You don't have to say that just to like placate me. Okay, so maybe if we did a better job of identifying, okay, what are specifically the things that I'm doing that are doing that, and so that I can become more aware of them. Because I think right now I'm having trouble differentiating, okay, when is it too much volume? And so then I'm just restraining the whole performance. Yeah. And then when I do accidentally like let something out, it's like I don't even know when I'm making a mistake, or like I don't even know what leads to that mistake.
We could also just invest in a different mic for you. Really? Get you a
one
dynamic
for like
mic
weird loud people.
Yeah. All loud people are not weird. May I remind you of Freddie Mercury, who was recently memorialized in a movie called
And
Bohemian
he was definitely
Rhapsody.
weird.
And he was, but celebrated too, and troubled as you are. But they made a movie about him starring Rami Malek.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of it, but I heard that
I watched it on a plane.
I heard that you shouldn't watch it in that way, and that it's really a spectacle. And if you watch it on a plane, it's like, what, you're gonna watch Avatar on a plane? Okay.
Oh, don't watch Avatar if you're going to watch it on a plane.
There's a lot of movies that I think you should not watch on a plane. What's the best genre of movie to watch on a plane? I think
Not horror.
I think like light rom-com or drama. Yeah, something that's not such a spectacle. Mm-hmm. And like a melodrama.
Oh, something where you can contain your reactions.
Oh yeah. You don't want to watch horror. You don't want to watch something that's
no porn,
comedy. If you got one of those filters on your screen that makes it so you can only view it from like 10 degrees of angle,
and a Delta blanket
and a Delta
on your lap.
That's why you fly Delta. They know what they're doing, putting that triangle on their logo. Okay.
So definitely no lightning round.
Yeah, there's no lightning round.
Did we get anything?
Way overshot our time.
Way overshot. So, did we?
People love these conversations that we have at the end where we work out our differences and model that type of talking to each other. Really, a lot of people have no idea how to even start what we were discussing there, and that would be like a huge issue for them that would loom over them for months.
Yeah,
and come up over and over again. And like, I hope you feel okay right now. I feel okay right now.
I do. I will have to decompress, but I am certainly okay.
Good.
It opened up a good discussion. It was uncomfortable, but it illuminated a lot of things for me. Yeah.
People want to see you struggle.
I want to scream.
They do.
Scream, Morgan, scream.
What I learned from improv.
But what happened to Dorgan?
What happened to Dorgan?
Who was so loved and
what did you think of that?
Just
technique?
made a few
was that shit annoying
careless
as
errors.
Fucking patronizing of me being like, imagine that I had a podcast with someone. Let's call her Dorgan.
Well, I named her Dorgan, but yeah,
you did, yeah. But you saw what I was doing.
I know,
like, try and
I know, but
remove
it's helpful.
yourself from the situation.
It's helpful.
Is that helpful? Okay,
oh my
good.
God, no. I think that encouraging people to think about a situation in a way that helps them see it objectively is so helpful.
Yeah.
Did you do it in a way that was slightly patronizing? Maybe.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay. Did we finish that last thing that I kept trying to go back to about her question?
Ooh, sorry, princess. What did you want to know?
The very last part about, is it fair to like expect other people to be working on that?
Because if
That's
I'm
what I
working
want
hard to work through what annoys me, then I'd hope they'd be doing the same to foster patience for me. Is
you
that
can hope
fair?
all you want. You can show them that you're doing it, but you can't. You can bring a horse to water, but boy, can you ever not make that motherfucker drink.
Yes. I think the only time that it's fair to have an expectation of a person is when you've asked for it and they've agreed to give it to you.
Yeah, and when they intrinsically want it.
Yeah, so if you ask for them to work on a specific behavior or a specific thing that bothers them, that they have a pet peeve that you want them to work on, they shouldn't agree to work on that unless they want to do that or they believe that they can.
Okay, well, so what if the thing is that they are very annoyed by you, right?
Yeah.
You're expecting them to be doing
Prince
the same type of work.
To
yeah.
try to work on his
Not be annoying.
Not
be annoyed.
Not being annoyed at her.
Right.
For for leaving the bed unmade or something.
Sure. Right. Right.
Only if he agrees to do that.
Yeah.
Then she should expect that. You can't control other people, and they have their autonomy and freedom.
And I think that, again, like I said, you can model that living a less judgmental lifestyle allows you to move through with more ease.
Yeah, that's the best way to sell somebody on this type of thing is just be the example, and then they will come to you and they will ask you how you've done it. I mean, this has happened with the two of us. Morgan will be succeeding in some area, or I'll be succeeding in some area, and then it's like, yeah, what can I get some more of that? And we might not even be an explicit question. It's just like they start trying things that person has been doing and trying to move in that same direction.
Yeah, yeah.
And one disclaimer is anytime you're trying to do any kind of personal growth, you will alienate some people. And that has to happen. You will make new friends. You will form new relationships, and the ones that you have will shift. That's one of the costs of changing anything about yourself.
You will find new, exciting facets in some of your existing relationships, and you will have frustrations and growing pains or disintegration in others. You
may find that some of your relationships are founded on complaining about people that you're annoyed about with that person. And if you stop experiencing so much annoyance, you may not know how to relate to that friend anymore.
Yeah.
That person maybe doesn't need to be in your life for the moment in such a large role. Or maybe you find that, as you've grown, you also got into this new hobby or interest that is something that they're also interested in. And suddenly your interactions shift to more positive, growth, inspiring interactions.
Yeah. And I think that you can't look that far ahead as justification for not growing.
Yes, exactly. And
just
if you're in a
those,
relationship that you're like, oh, well, my boyfriend and I, that's our whole thing is we get annoyed about stuff. And you find that this annoyance is a real problem for you, it may end that relationship. And that is up to you. You may not be in a place where that feels worth it at the moment, and that may stunt your growth. But I recommend that people not stay in relationships that stunt their growth for any longer than they feel that they have to. When you're ready to, you'll find more love and more acceptance by growing than by staying put.
Well, because the other thing is that the growth is going to happen. The universe is going to keep pushing your buttons on this certain thing, and you're going to have to change eventually. In general, you will continue to face the same obstacles over and over, usually. And so I think it's just kind of delaying the inevitable to put your foot down.
I disagree. I think some people suffer until they die, and they never learn.
Oh, sure.
I think I've seen that.
But you will suffer more and more and more.
Yeah.
And your walls will have to get thicker and bigger, and
you'll get more and more defensive and fearful of others and
change,
and then you may die. And I believe every person
you will definitely die.
That's part of it feels like you have that choice, and it is up to you to decide whether you'd like to grow and
don't die annoyed,
things, or suffer your whole life. You do have a choice to suffer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. That's Buddhism for you.
There you go.
Pain versus suffering.
Yeah.
All right, PG. I hope that we gave you some interesting things to think about and strategies for digging a little deeper on some of the facets of your question.
Yeah.
And I hope that we also illuminated that it's complex.
Yes.
I mean, we're giving advice on this and super annoyed.
A lot. I get annoyed.
Yeah.
Quite. One last note on it is recognize that your annoyance is the other side of the coin of a positive trait of being hopeful and being precise and being a person with tastes and preferences and values that even allows you to get annoyed.
Yeah, knowing yourself that well.
Yeah, and having ideals. This is the way that things should be, and I've thought about this, and they're not this way, and that bothers me. Well, all of those prerequisites are part of the annoyance, and those can be strengths in lots of situations.
Totally.
So it's not an entirely bad quality.
Yes, you seem like a quite thoughtful princess.
Yeah.
So I hope that you are reaping the benefits of that as well.
I hope you get a chip dipped in you real soon and gobbled up by a person who takes good care
Good night.